waters. In one of the videos I even heard about somebody talking about their nets being caught and things like that. What was, can you give us a better understanding of what really happened, and then maybe we could go on and talk about the issues that are emanating from our fisheries sector.
Thank you, Mr. Njie. You've raised something that's very important and pertinent to the Gambian. Why? Our major source of protein in the Gambia is fish, and the poorest of the poor tend to eat yawboy and kobo because it's a cheap source of protein. Unfortunately, this is no longer, because the government has really had an interest in commercial fishing. And in commercial fishing, we brought the worst violators, i.e. the Chinese. Our seas happens to have a law that no one with a commercial fishing license or a trawler can fish below the 9 nautical mile. It means they need to go out into our economic zone, at least 9.1 and 10 miles and beyond.
Okay.
And the local fishermen cannot go that far because they have canoes.
Yeah.
Their machines are not fast enough. So therefore, the videos you have seen is a clear violation that these fishing trawlers are fishing below the 9 nautical mile, and there is no enforcement from the Navy. There is no reprimand from the Minister of Fisheries. This in itself is an economic crime. This in itself is a sentence on the poorest of the poor, because they cannot go to the market and buy fish. Thanks to our Minister of Fisheries and his technical team for putting the lives and livelihoods of Gambians at risk by them not being able to buy fish at affordable prices for their households.
And this obviously doesn't go well to support youth employment that we continue to hear being talked about by government and other officials, that you want our young people to fish, you want our young people to find employment, but the environment is not conducive for them to find employment. And worst of it all is that non-nationals seem to be given advantage over the nationals, and these obviously don't go well for peace and stability of our nation.
Well, I hate to say it, but what we see in our fishing sector tantamounts to economic appetite. What is economic appetite? You go to Gunjur. We have seen what Golden Lead is doing there, and there are no remedial actions from the Environment Agency nor the Ministry of Fisheries. You go into our waters and you see what the Chinese are doing there. Not much is happening. You go to Denton Bridge, which is a natural harbor for boats and the leisure cruise business. And today, Hansen Company have built a harbor right at Denton Bridge. Their big fishing trawlers are using those meandering turns on those streams, and guess what? They're breaking the mangroves. They're breaking the oysters that cling on those mangroves. The ecosystem is fragile there, and we're not doing anything to stop it because of few people and their greed. What kind of a country, and what are we going to do to pass on the baton to the next generation of Gambians?
Well, quite unfortunate. Gambians will eventually have to make a choice as to what we want for ourselves. Good enough, December 4th is around the corner. Gambians will have a choice. Gambians will be asked to go to the polls to vote. Let's talk about elections. But before elections, we talk about the campaigns that are going on. It would have been nice, it would have been decent if our campaign period or our campaign platforms were just being used to bring out what the policies and programs of the different parties are. But there seems to be so much immaturity, political immaturity, where politicians have moved away from talking about issues to insinuating things and doing this gadwale thing just like little kids. Would it not be better for us? Would it not be better for our development if our political class would remain on message as to what they intend to do for our country?
Well, politicians are just like chefs. They're cooking food. And what we demand is what they're cooking. So what's on the plate is what Gambians want, because if we dislike what they were doing, they would not have been doing it. But there is a need for it. What does that show? It shows that the Gambian electorate is not politically mature. It shows that the Gambian electorate is not politically sophisticated. And it also shows that the Gambian electorate is highly emotionally charged based on tribal sentiments, not bread and butter issues. How can this change? This can change through reorientation and education. And who's going to reap that benefit? It's not you and me, but the next generation of Gambians, provided our school systems start creating and cultivating a new Gambian that happens to have a sense of purpose for what being a Gambian is all about, the ideals of a Gambianness, and national pride. You see, the problem this country happens to have, we don't have a national identity. We have tribal identity and economic interests. So we need to change that, and it will change through the school system, and it will take a generation to reap that benefit.
Well, but the recent opinion polls done by CEPRAS talked about how Gambian voters are beginning to, or Gambians are beginning to look at the politics of issues rather than sentiments, being sentimental. So is that not an indication that some change is coming, some awareness? I think the more you have people that are maybe more lettered and educated, and not only by writing and reading, but the more you educate, the more you sensitize, the more the people will, begin to look at issues. And I think that is coming slowly, maybe too slowly for your comfort.
Well, regarding that poll, statistics like economics is a behavioral science.
Yeah.
And any serious statistician or pollster, once they make a poll, they will disclose few things to you. The sample size.
Yeah.
What's the size of their sample? How did they derive the sample size? For anyone to talk about Gambia and Gambians, and you want to make general statements, you have to be able to poll minimum 20,000 to 200,000 Gambians to make an inference that this is how Gambians think. And not only the number, but diversity in this number. So choosing a sample size is an art. And this art happens to be driven by certain features: socioeconomic status, tribal orientation, geographic orientation, etc., etc. So I don't know what constituted that poll. I don't even know the sample size, but I think it was too bold and ambitious to make a general statement of how the Gambian thinks. I'm not even talking about the one talking about who's going to win the election or not, but to make an inference that this is how Gambians are thinking, you should be able to have minimum 200,000 out of 2 million Gambians to say this is the mindset.
Well, it would be good to have a statistician to come, maybe for somebody from CEPRAS. But I looking at the global picture, or looking at it from a global perspective, I think it is good for our democracy for these things to begin to happen. I've seen a lot of criticism about the polls, and I believe the pollsters are going to take note of that, because there is another one that should come out in November. But it is good for me. I believe it's good to start, and it's good to move so that we could start thinking out of the box, out of the norm that we've been thinking for too long.
You see, polls are nothing but indicators.
Well,
and these indicators, and that's why when a pollster put a poll, they'll put a disclaimer. The margin of error of this poll is X%. So what's the margin of error of the poll that was done? We don't know. So when you give people information, you must give them adequate information to deduce out of what you say to see whether it's substantive or not. So any poll, the Pew poll, for example, in the US, will tell you candidate X is leading by 10%, and the margin of error is X, and the sample size we used was Y. Then that way, people will say, okay, for this person to say that at the national level, candidate X is leading, he was able to poll X hundreds of thousands of people. But just 1,000 households, and you want to make an inference that this is how Gambians think, 1,000 households, you can even get that just within Bundung itself.
Okay.
So the country is bigger than that.
It will be good to hear from the pollsters, but I was just looking at, maybe the indicators or what they have said in their report. But I quite agree that it has to do with a lot more. I know they have been trying to give an explanation as to what they are doing, but I think I believe they need to be encouraged. Let's look at, we are into the political season now. There is a lot of noise on crowd size. Is crowd size a good indicator as to who will win or will not win an election?
Well, politics of issues it's not determined by crowd size. It's determined by messaging.
Okay.
Politics of poverty is determined by crowd size. Why?
Okay.
Because there are inducements. What's inducement? Entertainment is an inducement.
Yeah.
Food is an inducement. T-shirts are inducements.
Yeah. Transport
reforms are inducements. So that's not the way for anyone to judge the viability of any candidate.
Yeah.
So for me, I am not interested in crowd size, and I will tell you why. The crowd size that was pulled in Banjul for both the NPP meeting and SFR's meeting shows that that's bigger than the population of Banjul. So it defies logic.
Indeed.
And even if the whole population of Banjul were to come out, they will be less than what we saw there.
So that means that obviously there are people in Banjul that would have gone to all the rallies.
Well, theoretically.
Yeah. I know that
theoretically, but when you ferry people, you get numbers. But what numbers, what it does, it gives a psychological edge, and it creates a perception of strength.
Okay.
That's what it does. And the politicians are not stupid; they understand human behavior.
But bottom line is, it's not an indication that you're going to win.
No. But like I said, it's a perception issue. Politicians love to create perception, and the perception is of strength.
But isn't it dangerous that people, you have this large following, and like you said, the politicians will thrive on perception. That, okay, by all the following that you have, a lot of maybe people that are not as informed as you are, that will be able to make these deductions, will believe that, well, these people have the numbers, this guy is going to win. Come elections, the person does not win, and the person says, I have been robbed of my right. Because you see the crowd that was following me now, it can't be possible that I lost the election.
2016 wasn't far away. We have seen the types of crowds Yahya Jammeh pulled.
Yeah.
Yet still he didn't win the polls.
Yeah.
That's number one.
Yeah.
Number two, yes, the Gambian electorate are not sophisticated, but we have a herd mentality. We tend to vote in blocks. Okay. And unfortunately, these blocks tend to be tribal in nature or regional in nature.
Okay.
Is it good for the country? No. And that's why I am of the view that we need to build a new Gambian. But for a new Gambian to be built, we need new ideals. For these new ideals to be inculcated in people, we need to mainstream it in our school systems. From kindergarten, a 6-year-old Gambian should be able to read the national anthem, and it's high time we have a pledge of allegiance that every day when kids go to school, like the Bible or the Quran, they read it before school and they read it before going home. And that pledge of allegiance will be something that will tell a Gambian what is expected of a Gambian.
Didn't we have that during our school days?
Well, I think so.
The national pledge.
Yeah, we need a national pledge.
I know there is a national pledge. Whether we used to say it in school as much as the national anthem.
But we need to, because
I agree.
It's called reinforcement. When you want to reinforce an ideology into someone, you repetitively put it into them. Okay. And if we have a pledge that tells us we must be forthright, we must be duty-oriented to country, we must serve country, and we must not plunder country.
Yeah.
from, let's say, the age of 5 until you're an adult, you're hearing this day in, day out.
It will shape your.
It will shape your thinking. I think the problem we have in this country, we have human beings, but we have a lot of human beings without character and conviction.
You know, you say this interestingly. This week, I've just been saying to myself, you know, our problems are more than our leadership. Our problems are us also, because you talk to people, you see people trying to fight each other for positions, people, you know, undermining each other. You begin to ask yourself, so, you know, when are we going to even begin to move away from this pettiness amongst ourselves to even start tackling issues of national importance? Because, I mean, we keep saying that every nation deserves the leaders that they have. And it's unfortunate that sometimes you look at us as a people, how we fight each other. How Nyang Njie will say something and you know what you have said just because somebody doesn't like the way you dress. No matter how important what you said is, they will rubbish what you said. You know, even if it was for their own benefit.
Well,
and for me, this, you know, really saddens my heart.
Well, it shouldn't be something that saddens you. The problem is that the social construct of this country is on a shaky ground. Why is the social construct of this country on a shaky ground? The social contract of the country is poor. What does it mean? There exist a lot of inequalities, and these inequalities breeds hatred. These inequalities breeds things that are not progressive. And how can we change that? We need redistribution of the meager resources we have. What does that mean? People in Basse need access to good medical centers. People in Farafenye the same. People in Nyomi the same. So what does that mean? Development in the country needs to be dispersed rather than concentrated, number one. Number two, we need to make sure that the resources of this country, including opportunities, economic and social upward opportunities, are spread out based on merit. If not, this country is going to be doomed and is going to sink. The social fabric and the social construct of this country needs fixing.
Wow, it's interesting. Indeed, we need a lot needs to be done for us and for our nation. Before we open the lines, let's look at the importance of voting, encouraging the people, young people that are in the majority, women that are in the majority to participate in this process, what their voter's card means, and how it is important for everyone to be out there to participate in this process.
Democracy is a messy dispensation, but this messy dispensation happens to have a lot of rewards. But with these rewards comes responsibilities. And the responsibility of citizenship fundamentally is voting. Because that is the audit that a citizens happen to have, and a verdict that a citizens happen to have to put the politicians a check, give them a scorecard and grade them for their viability or lack thereof. So therefore, elections is the only method given within a democracy for the citizens to exercise their power. And what is that power? It's called people's power. Do we understand it as Gambians? I think the answer is no. Because if we do, it's politicians who will be running after us, not the other way around. They are servants of the people, but so long as we, the people who own the voters' card, don't understand that, we're making mere mortals who happen to be our servants become our masters.
I said the last issue before we open the lines, but just one more thing. Yes, I know you're fond of saying that in the marketplace of ideas, development will thrive, but when you have a nation as small as the Gambia, and anybody just believes that they could be a presidential candidate, is that not a reason for us to be concerned? That, you know, there is a way that you look at yourself, vet yourself, and know whether, yeah, okay, let me, or is it just, well, okay, I have a Form 5, I finished Form 5, I finished grade 12, so I should just jump in the race. Is it because at the end of the day, it becomes almost like a mockery of the whole process, that anybody can jump and say, well, I want to be president?
Well, I differ with you. There is what you call inter parimus, I was just trying to get the Latin word. We are all forced amongst equals.
Okay.
No Gambian is more superior than the other, irrespective of how many degrees you have bagged.
Okay.
And we have seen people with degrees who are nothing but intellectual criminals. Okay. So, the number of candidates, for me, is not the problem. Okay. Because every Gambian happens to have the right to be heard. It's up to the masses whether that person is selling a message that they want.
Okay.
Now, should we have a barrier to entry? I say no. What can we do? All we need to do is make sure that if you believe yourself that you're viable, come in the race. But if you want to come in the race, this is the minimum you need to put up as a candidate.
I know
then that will be a deterrent.
Is 10,000.
That will be a deterrent for someone to gauge whether they're willing to risk this amount of money for the ideals they have for their country.
So from what you're saying, if the amount of 10,000 that we have now is changed and increased to a substantial amount, that would, add as a check.
Yeah.
Because I think with the 10,000, if you don't have 40% of the vote, you're losing. But 10,000 is nothing.
Exactly. So my point is, now make that amount something that the prospective candidate will weigh. Am I willing to lose this against my wish and desire? Because that wish and desire is a human right, and they have the right to. But right comes with responsibilities, and every right has a price.
Yeah, indeed. Every right has a price, says Mr. Nyang Njie. We are here at Straight Talk, time for Straight Talk, and the lines are now open. Listeners, you could call in and give us your own perspective of the issue on the ground. We've talked about elections, we've talked about fisheries, we've talked about the crowds.
But we didn't talk about Comium.
Comium has been suspended now.
Well, I think for me, we should not look at Comium. We should look at the failures in regulation.
Let me just hold you. Yesterday I think I was going home and I heard that they've suspended Comium, but I've been hearing about this 69 million or so. So I was asking, so how have they accumulated? How has it accumulated? Maybe some people need to be called to book.
Well,
how will you sit down and somebody is owing you up to 69 million before you now want to shout?
Well, there's failure in oversight. For the reason why Comium has become the company it has become. The failure of Comium is the failure of regulatory oversight. What do I mean by regulatory oversight? When Comium came into the market, overnight, they were a third entrant. They were the third company to be a GSM in Gambia. But they became the #1 company as it relates to technological superiority, because they came up with what you call GPRS at the time, which gave people internet on the phones, which AfriCell didn't have, which Gamcell didn't have at the time. And by virtue of that, they were able to churn many subscribers from AfriCell and Gamcell to build a respectable base of over 400,000 subscribers at the time.
Wow.
They were making money. But in making money, they never had a reinvestment plan, because technology gets obsolete. So therefore, you need to reinvest in technology to stay above the curve. But Comium never did that, because they had a strategy called transfer pricing, and in transfer pricing, you inflate your cost to the point your parent company can bill you for sending Mr. X to Gambia to serve for 6 months, and they bill you $700,000. So you pay it. When you pay, it's a cost to Comium, and that cost will be taken away from their profitability. So basically, you're moving your profits before taxation.
Wow.
But the regulator didn't flag these things, and all they needed to do is to look at their year-end accounts, and you will see these transfers. But unfortunately, that didn't happen. So Comium milked the investment until now the investment is virtually obsolete, meaning there is no way for them to compete today with any company because they're operating on a 2.5G when others are on 3 and 4G and even thinking of moving to 5G. So therefore, a company has a right to live and a right to die, and I believe Comium choose the right to die for the simple fact that they never reinvested. But the disruptions it caused in the economy will be heartfelt. Yeah. And that's why Pura should have been at the cutting edge to make sure these things didn't happen. But equally, behind every dark cloud, there is a silver lining. The silver lining is, if I were the Minister of Telecom, I will not only suspend the license, I will make sure that come end of the suspension period, if Comium cannot meet their obligation, I will close the company and not issue another license. What does that mean? Gambia will end up having only 3 operators because it's only 2 million people. Yeah. The more operators you have, quality of service will drop because the competition will be very high, and the fixed cost of most of the equipment they're using will not change whether you have 10,000 subscribers or you have 400,000 subscribers. So 3 companies is optimal for the market size we have.
All right, I hope Pura is not going to wait until it's too late for other companies. I hope everybody is complying, and we are not going to hear sometime down the line that somebody else owes in millions. We'll have the first caller. Welcome caller to Straight Talk. Good evening. Malaikum salam. Rosie, we are right here, sir.
John Charles, Pastor John Charles.
Rosie, naga ngozi. Nawek de mom ñu ñoo cawli. Mané nawek ñu ñoo cawli. Welcome.
Wow, man, to the guy. 69 million. From now to 1 year. Number Pura don't this thing has accumulated to 69 million. That's a question to be answered.
Yeah.
I mean, they have a claim and counterclaim. All this claiming that government is owing them over 100 million, something like that. And they've been following this thing since the second republic during the time of the IDA. And they have taken this matter to court, and according to them, this was young. You know what this our online is 40 million. Why you get up on the million? So finally, you want to take one at the next problem like I think they were I'm not an law. I'm not looking at the first representative. Wow. Maybe different is better part. I come to serve the people, you come to serve the people. If that is true, nothing more than no close in the other. I don't know do otherwise I was a student. They just have been an objective. Many of them don't mind. They give the vulnerable and poor people of this country.
Okay, sir.
I told you, they got
Thank you. Thank you. Well, what Rosie said, what he said is true. There's 2 sides to it.
Government owes.
Regulatory fees is at the end of the year,
okay,
a percentage of your turnover will be paid to Pura as your regulatory fee. If you make 1 million, X percent of 1 million becomes your regulatory fee.
Yeah.
So Comium is in arrears for 2 fiscal cycles, 2 years basically.
Yeah.
And that's just regulatory fees and maybe license fees.
Yeah.
That's one aspect of it. The other aspect of it, there is what you call call termination.
Okay.
Gamtel has been owing Comium legally for calls, international calls terminated on the Comium network when Gamtel ran and managed the gateway. And this was way during Jammeh's era.
Okay.
Comium has made attempts to collect its monies, but there were discrepancies on the volume that Gamtel and Comium didn't agree on reconciliation. But it is fact that Gamtel owes Comium international terminated calls to Comium network through the Abuko Art Station.
You know, the sad thing in all this is whether our authorities really have the interest of the people at heart. Because Comium has people working there. If the company is closed, these people will lose their source of income. So, and if the government owes or Gamtel owes and they are not paying, I mean, you also crippling a company when you do that.
But mind you also, I think another lesson that government should learn is we welcome investors to come into the country, and we just don't expect them to be paying taxes. We expect them to add the human capital of this country and also help in the social upward mobility of Gambians. You go to Comium today, the company is heavily skewed at the management level with Lebanese, where Gambians can fill those positions. Why is that not happening? Because we make it easy. Just pay an expatriate quota fee of $50,000. It's not about the money you charge them as expatriate quota. We should encourage them to make sure that these companies bring Gambians so that the middle class of this country can grow.
Yeah.
Any other country you go in the world, it's a first. You don't even have a deputy MD there. Most of the management positions are held by non-Gambians. So how are you empowering your people through that foreign direct investment?
You know, I have concluded that the people we give responsibility to in our nation, a good number of them that should do what is right, are just outright selfish. It's just their pockets. And I know in Sierra Leone what the miners used to do. They would settle these top officials financially, take care of the schooling of their kids, and give them a certain level of living. And because of that, they would turn a blind eye. Instead of regulating, instead of giving proper oversight, your attention is elsewhere.
Absolutely.
And you do it to the detriment of your people.
Exactly, and the greater good of society.
Unfortunate. Good evening, good evening, caller. Welcome to Straight Talk. Yes, welcome.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Well, I have been trying to listen to some stations to hear your opinion. But now finally I have heard it. Now I meet Mr. Nyang. Or Mr. Nyang. It was not too much of a because my call is normal.
They got that.
By the way, I have to make a point. The Banjul City Council and the voters of Banjul. Who is controlling the voters of Banjul or the development of Banjul? Is it those who live on the island or those who have moved outside the island and are still having influence on the island? One. Secondly, now the project at Travel is Banjul City Council involved as a city council because the school is in Banjul. And if the school progress, it's for the benefit of Banjul. Because Travel School has been dedicated a lot of Gambians involved. So we shouldn't allow this Travel School just to lie down like that and die. Because I have seen that they built a police station around there, and the school ground is getting smaller and smaller. What is really happening in Banjul, Florida?
Thank you. You've asked a good question. You see, IEC must come with stringent residency requirements. What does that mean? For you to vote in a certain area, you must have a nexus. You must have a vested interest, and you must have an attachment. Banjul, for example, a lot of people are voting in Banjul and they don't live in Banjul. Including the mayor of the city doesn't happen to have residency within the city. He or she crosses the bridge every morning. So that needs to change. Secondly, devolution of powers. The Local Government Act needs to be revisited so that municipal governments will have the power to control their jurisdictions. Today, municipalities are weak. Case in point, how on earth will the president of a republic stand in a public gathering, happen to say that he is giving out an ambulance, And that ambulance is not handed over to a hospital, it's not handed over to the mayor of the jurisdiction, but it was handed to a Bilal of a mosque when that jurisdiction happened to have Christians and Muslims. It's all because local power and decentralization and devolution of power hasn't been put in law. If that's the case, some of these great gaffes we are seeing will not happen, and the responsibility will be shifted where it ought to be. Today, if you look at the inundation in Banjul, no one can say anything to the mayor because the civil works that are happening there are not under her purview because power is not decentralized.
All right, we'll take the next call. Good evening, caller. Welcome to Straight Talk. Yes, welcome to Straight Talk. Alaikum salam. Yes,
Wahal ci kaw. Wahal ci kaw tuuti.
Wahal ci kaw tuuti. Waaw baax na. Ok.
Very important question about a commune. I have experience in debt collecting. Why measures against commune, I'm totally against it.
Okay.
Number one, if somebody owes you, I mean, a and it's a company. Company who only employ nearly 100 people have been sent home to do them talk. Not only 100 people, 900 people. Each I'm responsible 2 people. That's 300 people that have an entity. I mean, another debt to 69 million. Get now in Kasala, moving to Kasala. Leave what I talk together. You owe 69 million.
Wow.
And you tell me, oh, Nanga, I'm not in your river. I'm not debt to what I collect from debt. Then they okay, let's draw a line. Every year now, should added to the area, settle a loan.
Okay.
Against the area you owe. Shall I get a payment plan?
Okay.
So at the end of the month, we'll go at the government favor. We'll talk at the area.
Okay.
The payment plan is the same. $1 million.
Okay. Okay.
Get access to it.
Okay.
Then, so if you have to go, but it's not the same number. No, you will reduce or change the debt and the money.
Okay.
They put them focus on
the people.
You then talk.
They got it.
A company people still sleeping in bad debt land.
Okay. Thank you very much.
I think the answer to that is very simple. Comium has been emotionally appealing to people to understand the social risk of sending people home. But what Comium is not telling the general public, that for the past 24 months, Pura has been working with them to find ways and means of paying this money, one, and also they have been asking them to show them how they can reorganize to pay this debt. But the economic viability is no longer there.
But they've been owed also by
No. You need to understand one thing. Being owed money doesn't have nothing to do with you paying your license.
Yes.
You have a license to operate. Someone is owing you money. That two revenue centers are different.
No, but you could argue that the money you are owed is what you are expected.
No. You have the right to go to court.
Okay.
And get a judgment against, it's called judgment debtor.
Yeah.
If you do that, you can seize Gamtel's cars and go and sell them.
Yeah.
So it's enforcement from Comium side.
Okay. Yes, good evening, caller. Welcome to Straight Talk. You're welcome. Ah, okay. Wow.
Yes.
It's for Pura.
The money is paid, regulatory fees.
Well, that means
regulatory fees are not only for Pura, but they use this money to buy equipment to monitor the quality of service, etc., etc. So it's just not to fund their budgets, i.e., salaries, allowances, travel, etc.
Okay.
They use it to regulate the environment. So instead of having a fixed amount that is to be paid, you pay as a percentage of what you've generated in revenues.
Okay. All right, Kola. I hope that is clear. Well, I hope that...
buying those equipment is a one-off thing. It's not a continuous thing. Every time you buy equipment to monitor.
But when you buy equipment, it needs maintenance.
These people, they are contributing money to the operation of the regulator.
Okay.
They should have been represented at the board level.
Who, the regulator?
Regulator. Instead of having political appointees serving as board members at Tura.
I think you're talking about apples and oranges.
No, I'm not talking
allow me, right?
You tend to believe that you know everything.
No.
Yes.
Okay.
We're debating, my brother. It's not personal.
Okay. Young, let him land. Okay, go ahead, sir.
Now, you see, he who pays the price, what calls the tune, right?
Okay.
They should have representation at the board level.
Okay. Okay.
This is my argument.
Okay.
And the money they are paying to Tura will use it to buy their chocolate, milk, traveling.
Okay.
I mean, what are we getting as a society from that money?
Okay, sir. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Respectfully, allow me.
No, let me just ask this point.
Okay.
I just want to ask
Respectfully for the caller, a regulator cannot have stakeholders that influence their decision.
No, but that's what I wanted.
That's why I said to him, he is talking about apples and oranges. It's just like me having a seat at the board of the police, and I happen to be doing things. I have influence. So regulators are independent, and they don't have anyone who control what they do. So Pura cannot have any operator to have a seat at the board.
That would be a conflict of interest.
Thank you so much.
Okay,
and how much
your last words as time is not on us.
Well, God bless the Gambia, and we're entering into heavy political season. Let us use our discretion, use it wisely in the interest of the greater good, and may the best candidate win. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Njie. Thank you, listeners. Time has gone. We're sorry we couldn't get you on. But this is Straight Talk, and it's been good to